So before you unsubscribe, let me get through this video so you can at least understand why I did what I did. So as you probably can remember if you've been with me since this past summer, we upgraded our system. We did a lot of things to our system. I'm going to explain here in just a second. But first of all, the reason we had to do it was Carolyn's son temporarily moved here. We bought a camper and he needed air conditioning. We didn't really have the electric to run the air conditioning while I was here. He's trying to get back on his feet. We didn't want him to have to run the generator all the time because that would have cost money. So I spent, well, all summer upgrading the system, trying to understand it better. And the reason I hadn't done that before was, one, we didn't really need that much electricity. Well, we did, but we didn't realize it until after we fixed it. I'll explain that too. I did several things. And one of the things I did was I bought another charge controller. So in here, well, actually, we did this too. Carolyn bought this shed and put it together. I know people are gonna say, you should have done it. No, but she wanted to do this. So what we did was we moved everything from the camper, which we are demolishing right here, trying to get that cleaned up. And I planned on doing that today, but something else took precedence, which I'll explain again. There's a lot of explaining in this video. So this is a charge controller. What a charge controller does is it controls the amount of energy coming in from the solar panels into the batteries. So we had to get another one. What it was is the charge controller only thought I had one battery, and I don't know how to reprogram it. Somebody sent me a YouTube video on how to do it. There actually was not any information in there on how to do that in the video. There was a lot of other things, but not that. There's a COM port right here that you can hook into your computer. That's what he showed me. So I had to buy another one because it was only allowing me to put about 20 to 30 amps. I think it was 30 amps, might have been 30 amps, into the batteries at one time. 25 amps, that's what it was, because it thought I only had one 100 amp battery. That's what I think it thought. So I had like 50 amps and I needed to get in there, but I was only getting 25 amps. So what I did was I bought a second charge controller. So now each one is providing 25 amps into the batteries. I ended up getting 2 more solar panels also, so that gave me a total of 60 amps. And on occasion, these things will produce a little bit more amperage if the batteries are really depleted, so there was no resistance. It's hard to explain, I don't want to get too complicated. But for example, when I'm running the well, I can get almost all of the, well, I think I've gotten all of the 60 amps out of the solar panels. But when you're charging the batteries, it wasn't doing much until I got the second charge controller. We also got pure sine wave inverters, which really doesn't help us much. It allows us to run a wash machine now. So I have one 1000 watt inverter, and that one runs all the time. And then I have a 2000 watt inverter, which we use for the well and the air conditioning and and a coffee maker when Carolyn wants to heat up hot water. We don't keep this one on, the big one, because it uses 2 amps of electricity, even if nothing is running. Whereas the little one only uses 1 amp. So in a 24-hour period, that would use one whole battery nearly. Another thing we did, which was probably more critical than anything, was we moved the solar panels, well, not more critical, but just as critical, from here and moved them up to here about 10 feet. Of course, we put a tarp down to keep the weeds down and all that stuff. It looks a little messy right now. There's a lot of things going on. We got the camper being disassembled. I've moved some of the solar panels up here to the top of the shed. I normally don't put them up in the air like this, but in the wintertime, I'm having a very difficult time getting enough sun, even though I moved the panels up here. The reason I moved them up here is because these tree lines, this is east, and when the sun comes up, it shades the panels until about 11 o'clock in the summertime. But I was getting these things to start charging about 8:30 when I moved them up here. Well, I've rearranged them for the wintertime. I've had to, because I'm still getting way too much shade, but not in the morning. Things are charging up about 8:30, just like we're supposed to, but then about noon, things were getting shut down. It's been a real problem. Now that we have the wash machine, I gotta have enough electric to do the laundry. And if we're running, let's say we start the wash machine at 9 o'clock, then it takes an hour for it to run. And then I got to run the well to fill up the water that we use for the wash machine. So that's going to take us up to about 11 o'clock or so. Then at noon, my panels were getting shaded. Well, now it is 12:30 right now, and you can see they're not shaded. I had to do something that I know a lot of people are going to disagree with. And the reason they disagree is because you're hurting the environment. You may remember there was a massive, well, the remnants of still here, cedar tree here. And every time I talk about cutting down trees, I lose subscribers every time. Now stick with me, because there's a lot of good information here that I want to talk about. If it had been any other tree, I would not have cut it down. But it was a cedar tree. Carolyn loved this cedar tree, and I wasn't horribly against it. The problem I had with it is it was just so big. It's huge. It's the biggest cedar tree I've ever cut down in my adult life. And cedar trees are dangerous, which again I'm going to talk about. But for example, we have a walnut tree here. I didn't cut it down. And the reason I didn't cut it down, even though a branch will shade one of the solar panels as the sun's kind of moving around, it only shades it a little bit. And so about 11:30 I saw some shading from the walnut tree on that center panel there, but no shading now. So like I said, it would have been any other tree, I would have kept it. But with it being a cedar tree, it just completely blocked the sun for about 2 hours. So starting at noon and by 2 o'clock, it would start to unshade. The problem is then we have all these trees over here, which wasn't a big deal, but by 4 the sun's completely down, so we weren't getting enough sun. So I had all kinds of thoughts. People were gonna say, well, you should have gotten more solar panels and moved them over here and done this over there, and I could have, but the problem was I was running the generator. The environmentalists are going to be mad that I cut down the cedar tree, but if you really think about it from an environmentalist standpoint, if I'm running the generator, I'm probably hurting the environment more than cutting down that cedar tree. Also, the cedar tree is replenishable. It's going to grow somewhere else. Cedar trees grow around here like, oh, rabbits. But when you're running a generator, I'm running about a gallon of gas every 12 to 13 hours. But it's not just the gas that I'm using, although these things are really bad for the environment. I could run the propane, that supposedly is a little bit better, but I think in all actuality it uses more energy using propane because there's less BTUs than gas. Propane I just don't think is quite as efficient as gasoline. And the instructions imply it also. You don't get as much power out of propane on my propane gasoline generator. It's a dual fuel. I'm running this about 2.5 hours a day now. And it was just unacceptable to me, is all the work I'd put into the solar panels this year, I'm still running the generator. I had to solve this problem, so I cut down the cedar tree. I mean, the well, I was telling you earlier that I didn't realize that we needed this much electric, but running the well off the solar panels has saved us a ton of money on propane costs because we was running that propane generator to run the well. I ran the well off the generator yesterday because I wasn't getting enough sunlight. And that was the first time I've had to run the well off the generator since June. You know, you're running that generator a half hour, 45 minutes every day to run the well. That's a lot of propane. And I've cut that down to nothing. I mean, I don't know what the options are. Maybe get more solar panels, put them down there because it was getting sun down there, but I wasn't getting any sun until 11 o'clock. So essentially what would have happened if I'd have gotten another 12 solar panels, 2 more charge controllers, which would have been up there around probably $1,500. That might have been the solution, but the whole yard would have ended up being on solar, and we don't use that much electric. It just didn't make sense to me when I could just simply cut down one tree. The other thing is traveling around, going to get the gas, you know, using all that gasoline and resources to run a well. And I didn't see the point. Cedar trees are like my least favorite thing to cut down. I absolutely hate cutting cedars down. There's all kinds of issues with it. The very first issue is it's more dangerous than any other tree, probably with the exception of a dead tree. The reason cedar is so dangerous is you can see that I laid it down that way, but the tree is further back than the stump. Well, how did that happen? I actually did this one perfectly. This one landed perfect. It's got the perfect hinge. The hinge is, it's pulling material out of the stump as it's coming down. So I did my wedge cut, came in this way. The problem with cedar is when it goes down, so I'm going to use my elbow as the top of the tree. When it goes down, the stump part pops up way high. And so if you're not far enough away, it'll hit you. I hear my grandfather got hit in the chin by a small cedar doing that. As soon as I saw the cut to start to spread apart just a little bit, I stopped, walked away. I was going to go get my wedges because you can drive a wedge in there and beat it in, but I was scared to use a wedge because if I didn't get away fast enough, it would have popped up. As I was getting out from underneath the tree and I was over there, it leaned over on its own and it bounced up. But the thing is it has fallen off the stump, but it landed back on the stump and stayed there until I started cleaning up some of this mess. The other thing I don't like about cedar is the cleanup. Oh, cleanup's terrible. What makes it worse is my grandparents built a cedar log home. Now I know people will tell me like they know my grandparents. No, you're mistaken, it was pine. No, it was not pine. It was cedar. It was this mess. I know, I was there. Oh, I was involved with that project all the way up until they actually started putting the logs up. And as Grandpa was cutting the trees down, he would trim them up and I would have to drag the branches out. It's a nightmare pulling branches out. They get tangled up in each other and you're struggling and you're pulling and you're sap and the things are hitting you in the face. I know people are gonna say, you're just a whiner. I just hate cedar. And the other thing is it's quite dangerous cutting the limbs because you're having to walk on limbs and it's a mess because you got your chainsaw and you're walking and you're trying to set it down and you're trying to put your hand down and you're like, oh wait, no, that's the blade, don't put your hand on the blade. And it's just very dangerous to cut a cedar. So when you're doing it, be prepared. Have your area cleaned. So we got this side of the tree cleaned up because Carolyn wanted to burn some trash. It was too close to the barrel. And we stacked it up over here by her composter. It took up more room than we expected. You can see probably that it's actually covered up her composter. So we're gonna come over here with a little handsaw and trim it up a little bit. But it's a massive pile and that's only one side of the tree. So what we've decided to do is leave the other branches where they are. This is unusable land. We have a lot of unusable land here. We live on a mountaintop in Missouri. And all this is rocky. You can't mow this, any of it. So we'll just leave that here, let it decay. And after it decays, cedar's actually pretty easy to cut with a lawnmower. So once it decays, settles down, I can just run the lawnmower over this and break it up into like a mulch. But that'll take 2 or 3 years. But it's not in the way here. It's a little ugly, but it's not in the way. But as you can see, I don't cut any of this. This is just huge rocks. I wish I could see a rock so I could, oh, there's one. And the sticker bushes are a nightmare too. So here's an example of those huge rocks. They're just everywhere. I'm sure you can see that. They're all over here. And they're over there underneath the cedar tree, so that won't hurt anything. I don't like it there. Now, there is another upside to this tree being down. I can see down from the house, down to the solar panels and the shed and the chickens, much better. So if something is out here in the middle of the night, I'll be able to see it right away. And as proof of this morning I got up, came off the porch, off the house. Normally I can't see down here, but my headlamp saw eyeballs and I was like, ooh, what's that? And then I saw 4 more pair of eyeballs. So deer were all right here, just standing here. I love it when that happens. Hasn't happened for a while. So already there's big payoffs by doing this. Again, I know a lot of people are going to hate this, but I think in the long run, it's more environmentally friendly to go ahead and cut down this tree. I could have gotten 12 more solar panels. Somebody's going to say that, but solar panels are not exactly environmentally friendly. You got to dig up the ore, the silicon or whatever it is, and they do go bad. So after a few years, 20, 25 years, you're gonna have to put them somewhere. They're not recyclable. I got my chainsaw sitting out here. I think that one's seen its last days. That one has cut more trees. Now that other one is very old. I had that a long time. That's 20 years old. But this one's fairly new, and it has cut all our firewood. So there was 15 cords here and another 8 cords over here that chainsaw cut. It's seen many years of work, all in 1 or 2 summers. We'll get this cleaned up now, a little bit at a time. Just never work yourself too hard. A lot of people do that. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about someone put a tracking device on my truck. So if I can inspire you to weigh the consequences so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.